session with Ms. Asha Nehemiah. She writes books for ages 3 to 12, and her published works include picture books, early literary books, books for emerging readers, chapter books, and middle grade fiction and short stories. Asha's books are loved for her humor, their exciting plots, spirit of adventure. Her fiction also touches upon issues such as inclusion, diversity, and gender parity. She believes that stories are the best way for everyone, especially children, to explore new ideas and culture. She writes in English, and her books have been translated into several Indian and global languages. In this session, we will be exploring the involvement of the grands or the grandparents in the reading adventures of a child. Please welcome Ms. Asha on stage.
So I'll just do a quick survey here. There are very few children here. How many below the age of 16 here? Okay, easy to spot. Is there anyone above the age of 60? No, okay. So I would be guessing that most of you are between the ages of 20 and 40, right? Okay. So today I'm going to talk to you, and so I will indicate to you when you have to you. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about how people across age groups can bond. So can anyone give me some ideas of what are the ways you bond with different people in your communities, in your families? What are the ways you bond with them? Like, for instance, food is one very important way of bonding. Anything else? Music, yes. Books, who said books? Books, yes. Sharing experiences, sports, yeah. Travel, wonderful, yes. So I feel that books are one of the most natural, they're one of the most impactful, and one of the most exciting ways. It is a way full of endless possibilities. It's full of excitement. It is a way open to every single person almost. And it is a beautiful way for people across age groups to bond. So the title of my talk is How Cool Seniors. Now, you are not very senior to me, but you would probably be senior to a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old. How cool seniors can bond with young readers over books. So I'm going to talk about one of my favorite quotations. Can you all see the screen? Books are the plane and the train and the road. They are the destination and the journey. They are home. And I guess all of us are here today because we all love books. That's why you've come to a Lit Fest, right? Now, suppose I ask you to expand on this. Books are the plane and the train. They are the bullock cart and the auto. What else? Auto rickshaws and bikes. They are the spaceships. They are the submarines. And in today's age, books are even the X-rays. They are the CT scans in which you can look into the inner lives of people. And there is a wonderful cartoonist called Grant Snyder who draws a lot of cartoons about reading. He calls books escape hatches and flying carpets. And this is the important part of this quotation. Books are the destination and the journey. Because reading is like a journey which we start when we are very young and we continue for the rest of our lives. And the best thing about reading is that though the enjoyment of the book is very individual and independent, the reading journey is never one which you have to do alone. Because you're always accompanied by books, and you're also accompanied by the characters in the books. You are in a way accompanied by the authors also. So who are our fellow travelers in our reading journey? If you are a child, who would your fellow travelers be? Our family members. Like, can you expand on that? Parents, Siblings, very good. Neighbors, grandparents, neighbors. What about sisters and brothers? Yes. Yes, sisters and brothers are a very powerful influence on our reading. You're absolutely right. And what about in school? Classmates, teachers? Teachers, very good. Anything else? Friends, very good. So if I could have the next slide. So these are our fellow passengers, our co-passengers on our reading journey. So it could be a character from a book. You can see Harry Potter there. It could be an author. It could be a grandparent. Next slide. So I don't think we've left anyone out here. We have parents, friends, grandparents, librarian, uncles, aunts. So I guess all of you must be uncles, aunts, English teachers, cousins, indie booksellers. Now, who would you say is the most important in this whole community of people? Absolutely right. In a child's reading journey, the parent is like the supreme commander, whether it's the mother or the father, and the parent has the most impact on the child. Next, who? Next, if you had to mention, who would it be? Teachers. You're too good. Did you sneak at my presentation beforehand? Yes. So teachers are the next most important, and then you have all these other people. So if I were to classify it, put it into two groups, you would have the parents and the teachers, who are the most important people in the child's reading journey. And then I have this whole section of people who I call cool seniors. Now by seniors, you don't have to have gray hair. You don't have to be a grandparent. You could be a cool aunt. You could be a cool uncle. You could be a cool older cousin. So I've classified all those as cool seniors. And I've also given the name book buddies. So you have the young reader, and then you have this wonderful community of book buddies. The reason I've left out parents and teachers is because they're already very involved in the child's reading journey. But they have so many other things to worry about. Like parents are worried about, is my child eating vegetables? Why isn't he doing well in maths? Why is he getting bullied in school? No, so many worries. And teachers, of course, have their own pressures. So how many of you are parents here? Okay, almost everybody. So I would suggest that one of the things you should do is to actively encourage book buddies for your child, because your child is going to really benefit from it. And it's a two-way thing. When you have people of different generations bonding over books, it's very good for the child. It's extremely good for the adult. And we can learn a lot of things about books from children, and they can learn from us. So the first thing that it starts with is we should be willing to accept the child's suggestions. We should be willing to read what the child wants to read, whether it's a comic or a graphic novel or a picture book. And they too should be open to, there should be a feeling of trust. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all an IQ test. So here we have the young readers and the cool seniors. Next slide. So I'm going to give you an IQ test. You know what this IQ test is all about? Excellent. What's your name? Tell me. Garvajay Punjabi. Very good. So next slide. So I'm going to give you an intergenerational quotient test. Let me see how much you know about what children are reading today. Yeah, the next slide. Okay, don't shout out the answer. Garvajay, don't shout out the answer. What does the term manga mean to you? An Indian word for raw mango. stories about patriarchy, graphic novels originating in Japan, type of African oral poetry. See, okay, that's pretty good. You guys are quite clued in. Okay, next slide. Have you read any manga? You have. Good. Which is the odd one out? Matilda Wormwood, Ronald Weasley, Violet Beauregard, and James Henry Trotter. Okay, now I don't want you to answer. I want your parents to answer. But yes, okay, but don't tell me. Why is B the odd one out? Anyone else? Yes, all the rest are Roald Dahl characters. Who said B here? Correct. Okay, one more. What is the similarity between these? Raina Telgemeier, Nandita Basu, Dav Pilki, and Rohan Chakravarti. I want somebody above 20 to answer this. Okay, so they're not all Indian because Dav Pilki and Raina Telgemeier are not. Yes, they all write graphic novels. Okay, one more. Actually, I had just done this question in case there were any teenagers here, but I'll ask you anyway. What is the similarity between these books? Gachar Gochar, Tomb of Sand, Goat Days, and Punachi. Goat Days and Punachi are about goats. Not all of them. Okay, this is a tough one because it was meant for teenagers. So all of them were originally written in a language other than English. They were written originally in Kannada, Hindi, Malayalam, and Tamil. Okay, next slide. So if you want to be a book buddy or you want your child to have a book buddy, these are some of the benefits you will have. One is the service from a book buddy who could be an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a neighbor, is that it is absolutely personalized, it is customized, and it is unique. So you could be somebody's book buddy. You could have a neighbor's child who you want to just hang out with and spend time reading suggestions. You could, I am a grandparent, so I offer personalized, customized, unique services to my grandchild because I try to read what I truly, truly, truly love, hoping that I will pass on that love for that book to the child. I will also try to read what the child absolutely loves, even if I have to read it for the 100th time, so that I am giving the child undivided attention and a period of calm. You know, nowadays children are so stressed and so overscheduled their lives are. So if you have a book buddy in your child's life, there will be time for them to just read calmly and enjoy that. It is agenda-free service. It should be an agenda-free service. Now tell me, when somebody suggests a book to you, what do they want you to like learn something? Tell me, how do you get your book suggestions?
Other people tell it to me in school. It'll be age appropriate. You will like it.
I think you're a very lucky girl because very often adults tell children read this book because they want them to learn something from the book. But the important thing is to allow the child to read absolutely for pleasure. Or they want, say your child is very dawdling and very slow. They try to give the child a book about somebody who's just transformed by whatever. Or somebody has bad handwriting and they've been telling them to improve their handwriting. They want to find a story like that. But the best way to be a good book buddy is to give agenda-free reading to the child. And of course, the book buddy, if you're an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, you're only available periodically, which is also a good thing. Why do you think it's a good thing?
They are used to the schedules, and maybe parents are always available, and this meeting at one point creates curiosity in them.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting a completely different set of recommendations from what the parents are already giving, right? It's a completely different set from a different perspective. Say the parent is very into sports and only wants to read sports stories. You may have a book buddy who loves music and is recommending books about music or food. Older people, especially aunts and uncles, can be a big bank of stories. And I have personally found that children really love hearing stories about their own parents, especially the the naughty stories and the mischievous stories. So even if you are a friend, one of the nice things to do is to take your friend's child and tell them stories about what their parent did in college or in school, the funny things they did. No? So book buddies can be story banks of stories which children love listening to. And then, of course, there is the emotional dividend of bonding with the child over a book, which is very good for the adults and it's excellent for the child as well. Some of the other things you can do is to create a ritual around the reading of books. You can do it as a parent as well, but do something different like reading in the park. Let's get into bed on a cold day and read with a mug of hot chocolate. Things like that. Create reading projects. Like a friend of mine, there was a recipe, there's a book called Thunder Cake by Patricia Polacco. So she actually made the thunder cake with her grandchild. So they read the book, and the thunder cake is very interesting because it has tomato puree as an ingredient. So they made the cake, they read the book, and they had a wonderful time. Another important thing is to recruit more book buddies, which are librarians and booksellers. So libraries are wonderful places where children actually open up to the librarian about all sorts of issues and they're able to discuss it over books. And here there are two pictures. There's a librarian with a group of young teenage boys. And they are probably telling her things which they would never discuss with their parents. So if you want to give a child a nice gift, one of the things you could give them is a library card to a library where you have a nice librarian. And the other story, can you see, the other picture is of the children just lolling around, listening to the stories. Somebody is looking at the sky, and that is the atmosphere you can have in a library, which is wonderful for a child. The other book buddy you can have, are independent booksellers. Because however much you know about books, there is one person who knows something, almost everything about children's books. And that is the independent bookseller. Not only will they be able to tell you, and after some time, they will even get to know your child's reading preferences. And they'll say, hey, I've kept this new book for your child. And here are two wonderful indie bookstores in Bangalore. You have Lightroom Bookstore, where this grandmother and grandchild, they actually read an article in the paper about two Indian illustrators, Rajiv Ipe and Priya Kurian, and they went to the bookstore to buy the books. And there's another one, Funky Rainbow, where there's a bunch of children asking the bookseller for recommendations. So this intergenerational space, which is of young readers and cool seniors, which is the aunts, uncles, all of that, this is a space which I have personally found very, very interesting in my, interesting, and I've used it in my books. And one of the reasons I do it as a children's author is because if a child has to go on an adventure, who do you think is a good adult for them to go with? Or who do you think is the worst person to go with a child on an adventure?
This person who is like suppose it's a very fantastical adventure, then the worst person would be someone who just spouts out logic and ruins the magic of the thing. And if
Absolutely.
and if it's not a fantastical adventure, then the worst person to go on it would be someone who in the middle of this really important climax where the detective's about to figure out who did it, someone comes and says, fairies. So that would not be very fun because it's a really important scene and no fairies are in the story. So yeah.
Absolutely right. So now you've been very diplomatic and she has described perfectly to my mind a parent. So that is why in most of my books, I always have a cool senior accompany the child on an adventure. Because, say there's something very exciting going to happen and you have to dash off. What is your parent telling you? You forgot to bring your sweater. Or did you finish your maths homework? I'm not going to allow you to do this because you didn't do your piano practice. So in many of my books, without really even being aware of it, the person who accompanies the child on the adventure is a grandparent who's very indulgent, probably not realizing how much danger there is, or it's an aunt or an uncle or a cousin. This is not to say that I've never given parents a good role in my books. I have, but it's very normal for the child to go because it's just more realistic that here will be a real fellow passenger on this journey and you can really have wonderful adventures. So, so here are some of the cool seniors in my books. There on the side is a grandfather and granddaughter. They've gone on a holiday by train and their luggage gets mixed up with a very famous cricketer. So I had actually imagined the cricketer Srikanth, no? And when they arrive at this destination, they open their bags and there are no woolen clothes, nothing. So the grandfather says, don't worry, we'll just wear this cricketing gear and go out. And that is what they do. That's another book where there's a very encouraging grandmother. Yeah, next one. Okay, so this is one of my books which a lot of people have enjoyed. It's called The Mystery of the Secret Hair Oil Formula, where the two children, they accompany their grandmother, and the grandmother has a teenage assistant. So they can just get up. So the grandmother decides to take these kids along. They have to go on a long, dangerous journey. Now, had I changed it to make the kids go along with their parents, this would never have been a fun story. Because as you said, the parents would have spoilt the adventure. Yeah? Next one. Okay, this is another one which I wrote. It's one of my first books. It's called Granny Sari, where Granny and Anu have an adventure looking for her sari. So I'm going to read a little bit from one of my books. Okay, so apart from our grandparents, I also have aunts. Aunts feature quite prominently in many of my stories. So you have Aunt Malu here from Trouble with Magic and a Pinch of Magic. She is a creator of herbal remedies. And she allows her niece to come into her workshop and they very often go off on, they're like buddies and they do things. And that is Aunt Farida, again a cool aunt. So I'm going to just read a little bit from Trouble with Magic. Okay, so one fine day there is young Veena who decides that her aunt has to become very rich. So she comes to Aunt Malu and she says, my idea is very simple. I want you to become rich. So Aunt Malu says, what do you have in mind? And she says, everyone knows you are a wizard with herbs and flowers, that you studied the ancient science of herbs from a holy man who spent 30 years up on a tree in the rainforests of Kerala. So Aunt Malu protests. Just give me a minute to find my place. Yeah. And she says, I'm not sure I should try your ideas. I do trust you, but I really don't want to be rich, she told her niece as firmly as she could. I'm perfectly happy as I am. Your parents look after me very well. I have a lovely room of my own. Your father made this garage so that I can use it as a workshop to make my Malu's herbal cures. I make enough money selling these herbal potions to buy everything that I need. Everything you need? Ha! Veena snorted. Because she didn't think much of people who are happy with having everything they needed. So she says, okay. So you have a roof over your head. You have enough rice and sambar for every meal. And Veena made another rude sound, ha, to show just what she thought of people who were happy with eating rice and sambar at every meal. And then she tells her aunt, just think, wouldn't you like to have a little extra money so that you could do all the things that you secretly wanted to do? Like riding one of those fancy new scooters instead of your old bicycle. If you were rich, you could buy the best front row tickets for every rock concert. Or you could spend the whole day swinging in a hammock instead of working. You could learn ballet. You could learn tap dancing. You could go paragliding or travel in a hot air balloon. Aunt Malu hadn't even heard of many of these things. And she says, but I don't know how to ride a scooter. And I've never really thought about learning tap dancing, she said. And then she stood still for a moment with a silver spoon of red sandalwood paste in one hand and a little copper flask in the other. Had she been wise, she would have looked really worried by now. Instead, Aunt Malu had just had a dreamy look on her face, almost as if she could picture herself soaring in a hot air balloon or zipping around on a scooter, a shiny red scooter. So when people of different generations bond, it is wonderful not just for the child, it's wonderful for the adult as well. So I have here a list of some books which children have shared with adults. And if you would like to add more to this, there are little slips of paper and you could add. Or if you would like to add, would you like to add books which you would like adults to read with you? So these are books like Holes, Harry Potter, Magnus Chase by Rick Riordan. So these are all books which children have recommended to me, not my own children, others. And I've really, in fact, I just discovered all about graphic novels because I had my niece just thrust it into my hand and said, you have to read this. And the next slide, I have books which older people have suggested to younger people and they have loved it, like Asterix. I know, do we have any Asterix fans here? Have you shared it with any young people in your life? You do? Okay. So, and these are some of the books which, yeah. These are some lovely books about grandparents. So, there are no grandparents here, but I had just put this slide together of books grandparents can read with grandchildren, but I guess anybody could. Where? Grandparents, okay, yay. Where? Lovely. So do you ever read with your grandchild? So apart from reading with them, you should tell them stories of what your daughter did when she was young, no? She does. Okay. I'm sure they're a big hit. You do that. Okay. I know stories about parents always are the most favorite, isn't it? Yeah, so that's it. Yeah. If there are any questions you'd like to ask me, I'm happy to. About how to bond with children over books. So yeah.
So a long time ago, I read a comic strip in which it was called something family, and there's a grandfather walking with his grandson along some street, some park, and the child looks up to his granddad and he says, "Grandpa, you're so cool. Why didn't you have your own kids?" So speak to that a little bit, if you would, about this special relationship that exists between grandparents and grandchildren that, removes the expectations from the middle.
So I think, yeah, I had spoken about this a little earlier that with parents, they kind of wrap their children in love and they also wrap them in a 360-degree net, which is the worry net, because they're always so worried about them and their development and are you doing well in school? What did your teacher say? Did she say you're writing enough? Did she say you're singing well enough? Did you get a part in the school play? There's so many expectations, and it's only natural that one would want the best for the child. But with the grandparent, there are zero expectations. You just want to love the grandchild and do whatever they want. You want to spoil them. So it is a very special relationship, and it's a relationship of a lot of trust also. The trust builds up where you know that here's a confidant, you can tell them. And it's not just with grandparents, it could happen with an aunt or an uncle. And it is really a relationship you should actively encourage because they will be able to share things with their grandparent and not be worried about being judged. And say, why did you do that? If somebody hit you, you should have done this, you should have done that. They probably just give a listening ear. And nowadays, children's lives are so overscheduled that a grandparent or an aunt can just offer that time of just doing nothing much, but just spending a nice time together, listening to music, reading a good book. So I think this is like one section of our families or our communities we've not used, and I would even use the word exploited enough, and we should do it more.
Adventures of Mooley and the Blue-Legged Alien, there's a site called Way Outs, and for really for things that no one's ever done before. So how did you come up with that idea of Way Outs?
Yeah. So actually, I think that is the only series of mine. There's a series of books called The Adventures of Mooley, and there are 2 children in it. And one summer, one parent gets an idea. He stumbles upon this website called Way Outs, which is world's as yet original untried tricks and stunts. And typically, no parent would ever encourage their children. But here there is a work from home dad. So one day the children are troubling him. So he said, why don't you all try to win a prize on this? So that actually is my only series where I've given parents their time, in the sunshine. Because people who've read it say, wow, what cool parents you've had, these 2 have, and they're. And I really don't know how this idea came to me and how I didn't follow my instinct and just cut parents out of the adventure. But in this particular series, you're very right. I give parents their day in the sun, and they're cool, and they're happy, and they have a nice time with the children, right? Have you read the books? 1. Okay. So, sorry? Okay. Which one is that? Sticker is the third one. So thank you all for listening patiently.